Hello to everyone in the internet. It is currently Wednesday, December 12th, and you are watching Culture Shock, the only show on the internet that knows how to separate an issue of culture from an issue of politics. I am Nathan of Washington, and this is the news. Okay, so Stormy Daniels is currently paying Trump's legal fees for the false defamation case that Michael Avenatti made on her behalf without her permission. Which, by the by, again, I will say, it is not legal for a lawyer to do so, but he went and did it anyway. And he wasn't even telling her where her funds from her crowdfunding were going. Yeah, it sounds to me like Avenatti is taking for her ride so he can make a little extra money. But, you know, she is being very reasonable, and she is taking care of the mess made by Avenatti. Since he obviously won't. I mean, that's what adulthood looks like. Cleaning up the mess. Especially if it's someone else's mess and they refuse to clean it. Sometimes you just gotta. The amounts, the legal fees themselves for Trump's defense in the defamation case is $293,000. It is currently set at. Trump originally requested $800,000, but the judge cut it by 25%, attempting to probably make it a little more fair for Miss Daniels. Yet another story, the schock effect. Now Facebook headquarters gets anonymous bomb threat and the police confirm no bomb. Oh yeah, here we go again. Mr. Caesar Schock. And the 5 bombs that weren't even properly assembled sent to notable Democrats. And then there was that thing, I think it was at the CNN headquarters, where they showed up and then there was no bombs, and now it's Facebook headquarters and there's no bombs. But there's a definite pattern here. It's Democratic-leaning places. Places that favor Democrats and neoliberalism. CNN, Facebook. So I imagine that Google will probably be next. Because they're probably going to hit Google. So, you know, don't be surprised if it turns out that that prediction ends up happening, that Google gets hit next with bomb threats of their own. McDonald's to curb antibiotic supply in its beef. Yeah, this might cause other restaurants to make a similar decision, as they were saying that this is a classic butterfly effect. Which, if you're not familiar, the butterfly effect is compare the continuum of human events to like a puddle. And each decision we make is like sticking a finger in that puddle. Alright? We create ripples. And then those ripples move outward, and it becomes a continuum of cause and effect. Bottom line is, McDonald's could be leading by example, which I think is more often than not one of the best ways to lead. Is if you show people how it's done, and you do so with utility and, you know, not be aggressive about it. People, and if you gain that influence, people will follow your example. That's how society works on a fundamental level. And while this could be a wonderful thing, the drug companies will most likely try and fight back in some way. They have a lot of capital to gain from that stuff being in the meat. And you know what? If they do fight back, then that's just going to expose, I think, to people just how messed up these drug companies really are. I myself have been recently rethinking the idea of the open market, and I do think that at least a bare minimum of some regulations should be considered. And honestly, putting antibiotics in the meat, well, you know what? It's possible that drug companies could fight back, but then McDonald's can just choose, fine, then we won't use your meat. So they would lose capital either way. Make it a lose-lose situation, and they'll always back down. Bottom line is, capitalism in its purest form needs some regulation. But at the same time, we have to be careful not to employ too much regulation, because then you're kind of opening up the door to possible tyranny of the government becoming too big, too important, and too powerful. Because then you get shit like maybe we'll have a market version of the Patriot Act, and then have them violating the rights of the market holders by spying on and controlling the market holders the way they do the people. So I think just a bare bones basics set of regulations, and then everything else should be treated as extra and unneeded. The French Yellow Vests are not happy with Macron's concessions, and they're now demanding more. Yeah, I read about those demands yesterday. All these people have is just demands. More and more and more demands. We demand this, we demand that. Nothing is going to make these people happy unless they get absolutely everything they want. They may not accept any sort of compromise, although some of them might, which could tear the group apart. I suppose Macron could use that tactic. I just hope that his guys don't throw him to the wolves. But you can't just keep demanding shit over and over. You still have to learn to compromise a little and just get back to living. You can't just spend all your time rioting. Otherwise, you're really not living your life at all. Anyway, Mitch McConnell says that the Senate will take up Trump's criminal defense reform bill, criminal justice bill. Well, it's about damn time. Trump's criminal justice reform bill, by the by, is not really, his bill exactly. It's a bill he found that someone proposed some time ago and had been sitting in the Senate registry for some time. Actually, you look through that registry, the Senate's bill registry is open to the public, and there's a lot of wonderful stuff in there just sitting there. Like, if you may not realize, FDR, I think it was, when it came to education reform, FDR was a fan of soft reform, and he pushed a bill, and he created a bill and tried to push it into the Senate to switch us over to metric. But no one adopted the bill, and it's just been sitting there in the registry since FDR. And that was like early 20th century, I think. So that's been sitting in there a while. That's been sitting in there for over 50 years. I mean, that's ridiculous. And who knows how long this criminal justice reform bill's been in there. And if you're not familiar with it, basically this bill creates new housing and job opportunities for people who've just gotten out of prison. Because having a criminal status affects your ability to find work. This reform bill would make post-prison life a lot easier, and therefore they'd be less likely to have a relapse back into criminal behavior. So this, fundamentally, is a victory. The Senate, Mitch McConnell will make the Senate take it up, and then pretty soon we could see a much better life outside of prison ahead for criminals, for ex-cons. That way they'll be less likely to slip back into criminal behavior. Let's stop being so concerned with punishment and be more concerned with, the psychology of the human being and how we can prevent future criminal behavior, because all punishment does is make it more likely. 250,000 Syrian refugees could return home next year, provided the U.S. doesn't bomb them, of course. That was a little joke about the American bully state, which won't go away. I may be reconsidering certain things about politics right now, but I'm definitely not reconsidering that. America is not the world's police. We need to stop bullying other nations. Anyway, 37,000 refugees have returned already back home, with some still remaining in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq. 250,000 returning to Syria. That sounds pretty good, and must be that things have been improving over there. Of course, things could still get worse, and they could still get bombed if we got fucking Mike Pompeo in office whispering into Trump's ear, making him continue the proxy war started under Obama. And then if you hear about this one, Nancy Pelosi says that the wall is about Trump's manhood. Also saying something about how manhood could not be associated with Trump. Really? Look, I'm sure a lot of women, when he was young, found him fairly sexy, and therefore would not have had an issue with the idea of considering him manly. So I think that Nancy Pelosi, I think she's just full of hot air. I think that she's just the typical Democrat, doesn't like Republicans, doesn't like Trump, and just wants to act like a spoiled brat, doing stompy feet, and not wanting to capitulate to someone more reasonable, like a toddler. Bottom line is, it's not about Trump's manhood. He really wants to just keep out illegal immigrants. And it's not like legal migrants are going to be kept out as well, because the vetting program will still exist. And right now our vetting program is it's somewhere between Denmark and some of the easier countries to get into, I think. And then finally, Texas is now ready to lethally inject the 23rd person to be executed in the U.S. as of 2018. Alvin Braziel, who murdered some dude, unspecified, and sexually assaulting his wife. So first-degree murder and possibly rape. Yeah, wonderful guy. Well, look, I mean, if there's no hope for someone to reform, maybe it is kinder to just kill them, because prison is like hell, and the only alternative is to make them life in prison, and that's not really life, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people. So it would be kinder just to kill them. Mind you, I don't necessarily trust the government with the great responsibility of executing people, because there's a lot of innocent folks that they've killed, and the police are too reliant on forensic science, which is not really science. It's somewhere between science and pseudoscience. And forced confessions and so forth. If we were to use DNA evidence more, and I think we honestly should, if we use more DNA evidence and rely less on that bullshit, you know, there'd be fewer innocent people. So I guess, you know, the government should maybe crack down on the police more, saying, hey, you know, it's time to catch up with the 21st century there, Serpico. Time to catch up with the rest of us. Anyway, that's it for the Culture Shock today. I'm out!